Good morning, everyone. Just a quick mic and visual check. If my speakers can hear me, can you please raise your hand? Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it. So it's been a couple of months coming. Most of you by now, if you've attended our MRO Americas event, as well as been in several discussions with myself on behalf of AMP. We've talked a lot about, things we need to be able to do as suppliers with our catalogs. So, the sales approach, at least for the past 20 odd years that I've been in the industry, is that we let the sales guys do the talking. And we're talking a lot about the inventory that we carry and how we need to be able to get that inventory to our end user base. But at the end of the day, we should allow our catalogs to do the talking. So, and what I mean by that, your catalogs are more or less a representation of the goods that you carry within your warehouse. That is, they're an extension or should be an extension of the customer's warehouse. So as long as your inventory management system is fresh, up to date, and active, it's just a matter of extending that catalog electronically to your customer base. So today, with a very talented panel of speakers, including myself, we will discuss ways to move the industry forward. And guys, actually, I don't have that much talent, but I did stay at Holiday Inn Express last night. Okay. So again, I'm very, very excited about this. We've got at least my boss and the founder of the company, Wayne Mihailov, who will be talking about how we need to move the industry from days to minutes. We'll have the customer's point of view from Robert Cords, who's currently the president of MRO Holdings. We'll have a supplier testimonial from Richard Levin of AJ Levin. And then Danielle Chapman of Aero Exchange will explain Aero Exchange's role in the entire process, and then we'll allow time for question and answers. So speaking of questions, if you have questions while the speakers are talking, go ahead and submit your questions as they're speaking. And don't be afraid, ask any question that you think is relevant, and if you think it's not relevant, go ahead and ask it anyway. That's fine. Okay? Another thing, we will be recording this event. And we'll make it available to all of our attendees, as well as those who were not able to attend this morning. And then from that, let's go ahead and get started. So listen, like I said, I've been in the industry for a long time. I'm probably dating myself. I started in the mid 1990s. Spent a lot of time working in MROs. But I remember in 1995, it was just kind of like the heyday for technology as well as pop culture, right? Sears was actually still mailing out catalogs. Remember the big, thick Sears catalog, right? That we would all thumb through, ordering our Toughskins jeans, right? And our brand new Kenmore washing machine, right? Very manual process, but we were very, very happy when we got our goods 60 days later, right? Windows 95 just emerged onto the scene, and before you know it, millions of people were lining up to be able to manage their back office, right? America Online, it took basically the planet online, and we were all excited about that. eBay, right? Yard sales used to be the thing. Every Saturday morning, you would ride around buying all these used goods, and then all of a sudden, eBay had the brilliant idea to basically take that online. And then from a pop culture standpoint, Tiger Woods was just a beaming young golfer at Stanford University and hadn't won a major, and Brad Pitt was the sexiest man alive. But you know what? The 90s was great. I think a lot of us had a lot of fun in the 90s, but, our industry, to be honest, I think, at least in my opinion, has been stuck in that decade. And it's really time to move forward. When I say stuck in a decade, speaking of that Sears catalog, in some cases, we still take that approach that we should just be manually presenting our goods in the form of maybe salesmen showing up on site with line cars and beautiful, printed copies of the goods that you're carrying. And the salesmen love to do a lot of talking. Like I said, I love a good salesperson. I love all of our customer representatives. But when it comes to the rubber hitting the road, we should let our catalog do the talking. So Wayne and I, over the past few years, have spent a lot of time talking about how we should move the industry forward, right? A lot of, let's say, late night dinner conversations, back of the envelope, work process designs, etc. So the one thing we definitely needed to change is how fast we are fulfilling the orders for our customers. Okay, so I won't take too much of Wayne's thunder, so I'll just get right into it. So Wayne, if you don't mind, why don't you take us down at least the path to greatness here?
Awesome. I don't know about greatness, but we're going to go for good. Now we're going to go for great. We'll hopefully get good. Hey, thanks, Mike, and thank you, everybody, for joining today. We value your time. We appreciate you taking a little bit of it to spend with us. We view every one of our suppliers as partners. I know people say that all the time, but we really are trying to make that part of our culture, part of our really alliance. That's why you see that name, to make massive improvements for our customer supply chains. What does that mean? Let me talk just a little bit about that. If you will, just take a journey with me just for a second, way up in the sky with our highest flying aircraft. Our industry moves millions of people, thank God, millions again, every day from point A to point B safely, reliably. It's unbelievable in our flight operations and how good they are. Supply chain, maybe not as much. Like Mike said, I think we're still kind of in the 90s in a lot of areas there. So let's look at supply chain from a very high level just for a second. I like to think about, and so Mike talked a lot about late night conversations, wasn't necessarily dinner, it was probably the post-dinner beverage choice where the great ideas really flow. But think of supply chain, if you will, with me. Let's think about heavy maintenance, because that's our primary customers today. Let's think about heavy maintenance. Let's talk about supply chain. I think supply chain kind of has two starts and one end, if you will, in that process. So number one's on the supply side, which we don't really deal with. Most of you do. And let's just talk about a seal. So a seal, at some point, the rubber is sealed is adhered to the metal, and it falls out of the production machine onto a conveyor belt to be taken off. That's where I view kind of supply chain is to start. That's where Mike and I started as we were really kind of looking at this. That's the supply that eventually gets down to a demand. So the demand start is really when a mechanic working on an airplane and he says, that seal needs to be replaced. That thought in his mind that needs to be replaced. That's kind of the demand start. Where does it all end? Well, those come together, obviously, at some point. Not yet. Stay on slide 6, please. Those come together, and then they kind of end when that mechanic is installing the part, right? Once it's in his hand and he's in a place to install it, that's kind of where supply chain ends. So you guys can kind of stick with me on that. So the question that we started asking was, where can we really make a difference, right? Where is traditional supply chain started and ended? And how do we kind of help our customers win big? Look, we want our customers to win, and I'm sure you guys too. We want our suppliers to win big. And in this environment, right, they really need us to help with cash, with cost, with efficiency. How do we make that difference? So how does that process work today? Let's focus a little bit more. Let's not go all the way upstream on the demand side to say the mechanic realizing he needs it. Let's say that the maintenance facility has that in mind, or the airline, the line person, whoever it is. At some point that goes through config and it comes out as a material requisition, a material request, right, an MR. So they need 4 of this bolt by next Tuesday, okay? How's the process work today? Well, usually the operations module of an ERP will then send that to the purchasing module. That purchasing module puts it in a queue. Eventually it's acted upon by a purchasing person, a buyer, right? And they go get quotes, and then they eventually place a PO. They're doing some sort of evaluation on their own. That process typically takes 52 hours in the various kind of blending of customers we've looked at. And we thought, man, we could really make a difference there. So let's look at what that looks like. We go on to slide 7 for just a minute. This is an awesome benchmark from 1995. You heard Michael mention 1995. So this was an unnamed large German airline with a big technical group, and they're benchmarking from 1994 and where they tried to get to. So If you look at planning and process and dispatch purchasing, so that's kind of quoting and order placement. So their formulas at that point were like 25 days. Their status at that point was 10 plus 1, if you see that. So 11 days, and they wanted to get to 2 days, right? 1 plus 1. Congratulations. Yay, we made it. It's now 2 days. But that's not good enough anymore, guys, right? We can order stuff with a couple clicks on Amazon and to buy a $2 widget on our own private life. Why can't we do that in a sophisticated industry like aviation? So go back to slide 6, if you will, please. So how do we change that thinking? How do we skip from days, skip over hours, and start thinking about minutes? Well, let me tell you, here's what we did. So we started thinking about that. We said, okay, we recognize that the only kind of viable EDI platform was AeroXchange. So we worked with them to invest for years, frankly, and millions of dollars, and what we think is some pretty cool automation to try to, again, go from that days to minutes. We worked side by side with several of our customers, most notably Flightstar and Aeromon, to ensure a seamless flow with their business processes and systems. All assisted, of course, by the proactive leadership of their parent company, MRO Holdings. And we, of course, have their president here today, whose supply chain reports to him. And it's through their kind of vision that we were able to go execute on this. We worked with many of you, both big and small, who are forward-thinking enough to embrace this step change in automation. Some great suppliers like AJ Levin, and you're going to hear from Mr. Levin today. Appreciate you taking the time. Look, we developed a simple integration with the customer that takes their MR, right? It immediately goes to visibility of all your inventory if you're up and running on real-time catalogs, and we'll talk about that, right? If we confirm that one or more of you have the inventory, our coding, it causes the customer to send us a purchase order automatically, and then our system automatically chooses the best value source. What's best value mean? It's not just price. It's based on actual performance, historical performance, on time and full OTIF, processing time, adherence to catalog pricing, lead time, trace code, condition code, location, takes all those into account, right, with values that are assigned and ratings, and sends a PO automatically. Guys, I know this takes a lot of the human element out of a lot of this, but this is how we make a difference for our customer. This is how we help them with cash and cost and reliability, right? And so this automation is something that's really working. So, and we also have the vision that our platinum suppliers, right, will actually automatically accept our sales orders, purchase orders, and send them straight to the warehouse. What does that mean? That means that from MR to pick ticket, okay, which used to be 52 plus 12 plus 12 or something, is now minutes. It's all automated. And we're not talking about supply chain for APUs or IDGs. That's worth some serious human intervention. But for the $10 part, the $20 part, it makes no sense to spend all that human capital and time to order that. And that's where this fits in. Does that make sense, everybody? So we move on, please, to slide 8. Hopefully, by the way, guys, this all excites all of you as we get a chance to really make a difference for our customers. So look, many of you are up to speed on some of this critical catalog data already. Mike has, I'm sure, talked to all of you and Chris about how to do this, but this is the type of thing right here. Just this, how do you make a difference? How do you change the industry? How do you support our mutual customer? How do you increase your sales? Get your catalogs up to speed, right? Get those into real-time, buyer-specific catalogs for us. Let me point out a couple of things here. Number one, get those fields right? Quantity, condition, lead time, trace code, price, location. Right? Work with Mike and Chris and our Supplier Alliances team. We keep your catalogs completely confidential. They're not shared with anybody, but this is how you play with us and how you increase sales, right? As we are using that automation to help make our customers' lives better. You've seen trace code over there on the left. You've seen that in AeroXchange. This is a critical new field. You know, we're proud to say we've driven to the marketplace that makes the automation work. If you have surplus in multiple different lines, it's a little bit harder. But this is what will let your inventory flow to us, right? And let the automation, the automated purchasing work. The next big one here is your automation, or excuse me, your operations data. So over on the right, you have to have those items filled out, right? We want to help you improve your supplier performance by honoring where you are and how you work. You tell us what your dispatch, what your lead time looks like. You tell us what your order cutoff times are. by shipping priority, by shipping by carrier and by their priority, right? When's the carrier cut off, right? You tell us how you work, and we'll work with you. One of the big things we see in lead time, which is a big one, guys. Lead time is a big one. How do we take lead time from days to minutes? Well, we do that by clear order cutoff times. So that the standard that we're asking everyone to adhere to, and I'm sure you've heard this before and is really important as we move forward, is a 0-day lead time means if we place the order before your cutoff time, it ships today. If for the quantity you show as having in stock, it's really that simple. If we place the order 1 minute before that cutoff time, we expect you to ship today, right? That's your commitment to ship today. If it's 1 minute after that time, your commitment is to ship tomorrow. So by going with that definition, we've now changed that days of lead time into really minutes of lead time. So it's really important for you guys to help us with that. And several of you have done that. Really appreciate that. Many of you still need to get up to speed. This is a major factor in getting selected as a supplier, right? Lead time is super important for our customers. So please make that one happen. I'm just going to close out to say how much I appreciate all of your participation. I hope that kind of explained the process and how your catalogs can really help you sell more to us and make you a better supplier, and then eventually help our customer, right, our joint customer succeed. Hopefully that's come through. We view you guys as our alliance members, as our partners, in helping us deliver a more robust and efficient supply chain. Many of you have already made that happen, and so many more are ramping up every day. It's nice hearing those stories from Mike almost every day. Thank you. Please help view us as a partner, and how we're going to help you every day to be better. We want that to happen. Mike and his team are committed to that. I look forward to this journey with you. So let's get this right. Let's work together to make even more step change improvements in the future. We have more coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wayne. So next up, speaking of customers, is a very, very important customer to AMP. Actually, I reported to Mr. Corge for a few years. Probably one of the most knowledgeable guys in the industry, learned a lot. Very, very high pressure when it comes to performance. So I would say I was inspired a lot by his expectations when it came to ensuring that we're always just kind of, taking the initiative to improve our business processes. So Rob, if you don't mind, I would love for you to share your perspective, at least your point of view on your expectations for your supplier base.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mike. Look, as we collectively do business with each other, one of the things I think that's important is, sharing how each of our businesses operate. The more we operate in silos and in secrecy, I think the less ability we have to anticipate what the other business needs, what the other side needs. And so we want to accomplish a couple things today. I'll give you a brief overview of MRO Holdings. I think many of you know it, but I'll just touch on it briefly. Then I'm going to talk about kind of how we think of inventory and how we think of material and how we think of acquiring material. And not all material is necessarily created equal in our minds. And while I'd love to hold all the inventory that I would ever need, it's just not economically practical. So we'll walk through that. But essentially where MRO Holdings is today is we have 4 operating companies: Flightstar, TechOps, North State, and Aeromon. Aeromon was sort of the start of it all, if you will, coming out of Taka Airlines back in the 80s, and really operated as a site for most of that time period. Then in 2016, we acquired Flightstar. In 2017, partnered with TechOps Mexico, and in 2020, February of last year, we acquired North State. We also, launched in 2019 what we call MRO Solutions, and MRO Solutions is kind of the operational support for the business. And what I mean by that is it's not sort of finance and human capital and IT and that sort of thing, but it's engineering, it's pre-check planning, it's daily planning, it's procurement. It's the operational brain center of the business to support all of our operating companies. And in terms of scale, we'll do over 8 million hours this year, probably around 8.2 million hours through our collective facilities. Not that size matters necessarily. We really focus on the quality of work and the service that we provide to our customers, and size, sort of becomes a byproduct of that. But that makes us the largest in the Americas, as we have been for a number of years, and about the third largest provider in the world. So we provide a pretty broad range of services across platforms for heavy checks. We cover, all the primary narrow body aircraft across our facilities. We do some wide body aircraft. It's more of I would say, a growth opportunity for us. We would expect to see expansion into wide body aircraft over a time period. Through the pandemic, it actually worked out fairly well that we weren't too exposed to wide body aircraft, but longer term, we see value in that. We do have duplicate capabilities across our sites. What we're really trying to do with this is not just have a growing business, but be able to offer to our customers different sites. And so we have multiple customers who have aircraft at multiple sites, whether they're very light checks, whether they're different checks, different fleets. We try to take a multi-site approach with our customers to offer them specifically what they're looking for. So we'll continue to expand capabilities as the market dictates. We've got new aircraft that are entering into kind of prime maintenance requirements that we'll expand into. And I would suspect that even over time, we'll add sites as it makes sense to deploy our strategy, not simply to get larger, but to sort of continue down our path of providing the services that our customers need. So to do that work, to perform heavy maintenance, we need material, as you all know, and you can see our material spend over time from 2018, above 100 million to just under 200 million this year, and certainly by 2022, next year, we'll be well over 200 million in material. We'll see about a 20% increase in material spend. That roughly approximates to the growth in man hours that we saw from 2019 to 2021 2 pages ago. But the other thing that you'll see in here is that the non-stock material, the material that we don't plan for, is becoming a smaller percentage of our business. We try to plan as much of the material as we can. We try to give those forecasts out so people can plan for that. We do that for 2 reasons. One is, we want to have stocking programs where it economically makes sense. We have a requirement within our supply chain group to give a service level to each of our opcos to make sure they have the material that they need. Historically, we've just planned for that on a part number basis, making sure that each part number has a specific fill rate. But the big change we made in kind of mid-2020 and are finalizing for all of our opcos this first half of the year is we're planning by the check. So when we go into look at our material performance, we can look at each specific check and say, how did that specific check perform? And the reason that's relevant that you'll see is we have checks of different durations. So when we have a 10-day check or an 8-day check, that the operation needs a 98, 99% material performance. When we have a 40-day check, they don't need that kind of fill rate. They can survive on something much less. And so we can overinvest, if you will, on the short checks, underinvest a little bit on the long checks, and balance out our inventory so it's economically viable for our business while still providing the parts that the operation needs when they need it. So the challenge we always have is, we'd love to have all the inventory we ever need, 40,000 part numbers. We'd love to have it all on the shelf. The reality is it's just not economically viable to do that. we would have to deploy a tremendous amount of capital in order to purchase all that inventory. We'd need to hold probably 2 to 3x the amount of inventory that we have today just to have that one part that may show up at some point on our shelves. And the reality is that it's just not worth it. And so, we're always trying to balance what we hold versus what we don't and what we need to order during the course of the check. I think part of the way that we see it, it's kind of the same with aircraft maintenance and the volatility that our customers see, is that our customers have maintenance requirements and material requirements, but they only have their own fleets and material requirements to balance that against. We have multiple customers, so we can do a little bit better job than any one of our individual customers in planning inventory and balancing out maintenance requirements throughout the year. And then we see very much our supplier partners, you all, being able to sort of balance out the requirements of MROs and are sitting in a position to manage inventory, certainly some of the lesser used inventory, in a manner better than we can. So one of the other things that's happening that we're seeing in our business is that we're seeing shorter checks on the rise. And so what does that mean? And I'm going to walk you through the anatomy of a check here, but essentially, when we have a 40-day check, 30-day check, look, it's always urgent. We always need to manage that check deliberately, but we've got time. When we have a shorter check, that puts pressure on the operation. It puts pressure on supply chain internally. It puts pressure on you all to try to meet the customer's requirements and make sure that we get that check out on time. And so this is probably one of the places where the messaging that you heard from Wayne really resonated with MRO Holdings and our operating companies, which is we just don't have time to wait for material. Things pop up in the check. The technicians, the mechanics are doing everything they can to get the aircraft out on time. And when they identify a part that we haven't used in 2 years, they kind of need it pretty fast. And so the value proposition that Wayne put forth to MRO Holdings, because we're a customer of AMP, about moving from days to minutes is something that's really important to us, and the ability for you all to sort of align with that model and say, okay, well, what is it that AMP needs in order for them to be able to procure material quickly for us as a customer is something that's very, very important to us. So many of you may know this. We didn't really worry about what we thought you knew or didn't know. But again, just to kind of give you a little bit of insight into what our operating companies and our mechanics and supervisors see on a daily basis when they're trying to execute a check. And this is, what we would call the anatomy of a short check. A long check is no different from the major steps. It's just you have more time to execute it. But essentially what happens is, we get a work package, ideally 30 days out. We don't always get it 30 days out, but we get a work package that tells us the material that we need to perform the initial inspection. The aircraft shows up, we do an initial ops test, we do open up and cleaning, and then inspections occur within about 20% of the check. On a long check, that's a lot of days. On a short check, 10-day check, that's around 3 days to get that complete. So then what happens is the inspection identifies, what non-routines need to be raised, and non-routines are non-conformities with how parts of the aircraft are supposed to look, length of cracks, conditions of seals, etc. And so then the inspectors will then say, hey, you know what? This needs to be repaired, and this requires material to perform that repair. They then need to identify, well, what exactly material, what variant, what effectivity, what exact part. Not everyone's 737 is exactly the same. And so they got to identify what that part is. And as you can see, within the time frame of a short check, it all has to be figured out pretty quickly. Now, granted, on a short check, we try to have a 97, 98, 99%, depending on the exact check that we have, part number fill rate, which means that part's going to be available when the mechanic needs it. And we can use our pretty sophisticated software to do that. But we still might have 10, 20, 30 parts on some of these short checks that we need to go out in the market and procure. And so that's where this speed of execution, this ability for AMP to be able to go out in the market through the catalog process or other means and identify very quickly quantity, trace, lead time, price, and be able to get a decision, a purchase decision back to us very quickly in terms of where we can procure that part. The more we can cut that out of the purchase order process, the faster we can get that part in. So just to give you a little bit of insight as to the numbers that we look at on a monthly basis, we sign up as a supply chain organization as a service level to our operating companies. We track these, with our executive committee, the shareholder representatives who we review our business with each month look at these numbers, every month, and not just at an aggregated level. We look at it, by aircraft, that we have. And just to run you through what this page is telling us is that the colors of the chevrons on the left-hand side correlate to the timing that you see on the right-hand side. And so, for example, the standard for us, even though we're bringing that standard down, is 2 days. So from the time that the operation gives us a request that says we need this material, traditionally the business we have in supply chain 2 days to procure that part. Now, many things happen very quickly and some things take a while, but on average we have 2 days. And what we're really driving that to, and have already started with one of our opcos, is we're driving that down to 1 day, and then we're going to drive that to a half a day, and then we'll see where it takes us from there. But you can see, at least in that first example, it can take the first opco on the upper right-hand side, it can take up to 9 days, or it does take up to 9 days on average to get parts in to our facilities. It might be up to 2 days on average to procure material, 3 days for the supplier lead time for you all to go ahead and ship a part. And then depending on our location and how it aligns with, air freight and other shipping lines, or transport lines, it can take up to 4 days to get that part to the site, without it being expedited. Certainly there's parts that can get there a lot faster. So you see there's 9 days in this process, and we're trying to, as a group collectively, everybody on this call, plus logistics providers, how do we shrink that down in a manner so we can get material to the sites in an economic and reliable manner. So I guess just in closing, we'd love to hold all the material we can, that we would ever need, but just with the amount of space it takes, the capital investments, and then quite frankly, if we don't use that material, we have to write that off on our books, and that really hits our P&L every year, and it's something that we manage very closely. When we do need material that we don't stock, sometimes we need it quickly. It's not because that's how we want to design our business, it's that's the work that customers bring to us. That's what's good for their business, and we're trying to align our business that way. And so sometimes that creates an urgent need for material. We value the service that AMP provides to us. They're constantly focused on driving material to purchase it, acquire it from the right partner, and that means quantity, trace, lead time, the right price. And we know we don't always make it easy on you. We know that sometimes we have last minute requests. Sometimes we fumble in supply chain. Sometimes we have a late arising in an aircraft. We might have a 30-day check that something pops up on day 26 and we got to get it in tomorrow. And we know that puts pressure on everybody. But we really appreciate it when people step up and recognize that and help us out. So I think the key message ultimately is, thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about how our business works. hopefully that gives you a chance to kind of think about how to support AMP, how AMP can support us, and what the right moves you can make within your business. But it really is a two-way street. We know we don't always do things the right way, and so we're always open to letting us know, what we can do to help you be more successful, and we certainly will in any way we can.
Thank you, Rob. And the anatomy of the check, I mean, that's a phenomenal slide. And to our supplier base, listen, we know that you don't have a seat at the table when it comes around to negotiating the span times of the aircraft. But the fact remains for a C check or a heavy D check, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end, right? So somewhere between the beginning and the middle is where we really have to compress the time it takes to fulfill an MR. So we just don't have the luxury of going from day 0 to day 30 to get the parts in that we need for the aircraft. So exposing your inventory availability in real time and allowing our buyers to be able to see that inventory and take advantage of that availability during the beginning when we're doing all the heavy inspections, and during the middle when we're trying to button the aircraft back up is very, very important. And to Rob's point, yes, we don't always get it right. None of our customers get it right. In some cases, we'll call you up on the date we're trying to get the aircraft out the door. But when you're trying to move thousands of pieces of paper every single day, we can enable that just by, again, exposing that inventory on a real-time basis. So again, it's no different from what the end users see on their own hangar floors. They can see what their inventory position is as they log into their own databases, right? So having your inventory made available in a real-time environment, again, enables more productivity on the hangar floor. So all of our production leads and maintenance mechanics can see that inventory availability. All of our expediters can see that availability, and they can make decisions in real time that can really help move those pieces of paper forward so that we can get aircraft out on time. So Rob, thank you very much for that. All right, I'll just have an admission here. When I first got involved in procurement and supplier management, I really love the relationship management piece of it, right? You kind of felt every now and then kind of like a king, right? Suppliers come in, they want to wine and dine you, take you out to dinner, and every now and then you have this kind of like come kiss the ring approach. Bow down to me as a customer. Be the lowest price. Don't worry about my performance. Don't worry about me sending in orders at the last minute. Don't worry about that, okay? Whether or not you make money, that's really not my concern. Listen, that sort of approach from a buyer is not very sustainable because it doesn't take a win-win approach to doing business. So as Wayne and I discussed about our approach to supplier management in order to get the system off the ground, it is very, very important that we build alliances, okay? So alliances implies that there is a win-win between buyer and supplier. There is enough to go around, right? It's a pretty big pie, even in today's climate, right? We know COVID has probably, caused some major challenges from a P&L standpoint, but when this industry comes back to life, there's enough to go around, okay? So, our job is to ensure you're being empowered with the right data in order to make informed decisions. It's important that the system does a very, very good job of leveling the playing field for our supplier base. So you're not subjected to who you know within the organization, because maybe you have a good relationship with Chris, or maybe you have a good relationship with any of the buyers from any of the organizations. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to get the opportunity. You're just going to get the opportunity from a singular standpoint. But again, from an alliance standpoint, it's very, very important that our suppliers are winning. So some of the steps we're taking is being able to show you the missed opportunities because of perhaps your catalogs are not real time, because perhaps from an operational standpoint, you've got a lot more room for improvement when it comes to lead times, right? There's several things that we can do to enable or to increase your sales growth, like perhaps providing you target pricing for particular part numbers, right? Giving you weekly active reports on the opportunities you're missing because of again shortcomings in your lead time pricing, et cetera, as well as consistently providing you consumption forecasts, which is one of the things that I'll be honest, we customers don't do a very good job of, and we expect our suppliers to be clairvoyant. And the fact remains that our suppliers can't read minds, they don't have crystal balls. So in order for you to be able to hold the right inventory and the right quantities, we need to be able to empower you with data. Okay, so part of this, we're extending some benefits depending on your level of connectivity or the strength of our relationship. So again, like I said, there's some give and take between the buyer and supplier. So let's just talk about that. If we were to kind of stratify our supplier base, we look at it in terms kind of similar to like a frequent flyer program or a credit card program. There's an expectation that as you spend, for example, as you fly more with an airline, you get extended some privileged benefits, perhaps a complimentary upgrade, perhaps some extra miles that are awarded to your account for steady flying, et cetera, et cetera. So we're taking a similar approach to forming alliances. So as you, again, let's take, for example, connectivity. We are expecting the connectivity to be at the highest standard, real time. Now, we understand that not everyone can make that sort of investment when it comes to real-time catalog. So in some cases, you could be brand new in the industry. You could be a brand new customer. Maybe you don't know very much about Aero Exchange, which Danielle will get into later on in this presentation. But as you start at that, let's say at that entry level, the expectation is for you to increase your connectivity as well as your operational performance in order to get the reciprocal benefits that will be extended to you from AMP. And some of those benefits, again, could be everything from tailored consumption reports, active missed opportunity reports, target pricing. We can give you some limited exclusivity on certain items. But again, I want to reiterate, information is extremely powerful. So the most important thing is for us to tell you what you're doing and what you're not doing. So I really like what we've done over the past 6 or 7 months. I've been on, I would say, dozens of performance calls with our suppliers, educating them on the misses and the hits, right? So that answers that question that all of our suppliers are asking us about. And what I mean by, I'm sorry, not question, but that radio station that we're all expected to tune into, right? The moment I start talking to suppliers, they're like, hey, Mike, can you please tune to WIIIFM? Sorry, Wayne, I had to use that one. So what is WIIIFM? What is in it for me, right? We hear you, Mike. It all sounds good, but what is in it for me? I'll tell you what's in it for you. So here is the perfect example of how information can really help to improve your performance from a sales standpoint. So this is one of our platinum suppliers that we started talking to, I would say, during the launch phases of our systems. And we launched literally at the peak of COVID, or at the top of COVID. So, pretty bold move on our point. But at that time, this particular supplier, I think we were, and this is not sensitive information, I think we were spending somewhere around $60,000 a month pre-pandemic with this supplier. So as you know, the moment COVID struck, everyone was looking for ways to keep revenue going. Right, so the timing was very good, and the one thing we started doing was educating that particular supplier on what they needed to do in order to make improvements to their performance. So as we talk about these gates, we use the term gates a lot when it comes to pass fail. So what are the gates? Well, the gates are basically the data points within your catalog, right? What is your part number? What is the quantity position of that particular part number? What is the trace position of that particular part number? What is the condition? What is the unit of measure that you're carrying it in? And obviously, what is the price of that? So as the MR passes through our automated system, it goes through those series of passes and fails. So on the backside of that is your performance. So we thought it necessary to share your performance for a particular period. So for this particular period, for the past year or so, this supplier has done a very, very, very good job of incorporating the feedback. For this particular scorecard, which is an actual scorecard, their big misses, the biggest miss was on their operational or their dispatch lead time. Knocking it out of the park for everything else pre-pandemic, but from a lead time standpoint, they were just really fixated on having some very long lead times for items that are literally sitting in the bin. So if they just implemented some improvements around picking and packing faster, they could realize some benefits on the backside. So what is in it for you? Check this out. I mean, this is amazing. Again, those early periods with this particular supplier, they dip well below the average of $50,000 or $60,000 a month that we were doing with them. But the moment they incorporated those changes, it took off. This is real data. This is a supplier, again, that was making, I'd probably say, marginal sales with us, and all of a sudden, after making a few adjustments, they increased their sales 5x. I think that, again, that is a testament to them listening to the feedback that we're getting, and again, it goes back to that radio station. What is in it for you? Well, the proof is in the pudding, and I really, really appreciated the supplier making those adjustments. So speaking of suppliers, we value every single supplier, from the large behemoth OEMs to mid-sized supplier to our small suppliers, et cetera, and especially those suppliers who have been in the industry for a very long time. So, I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Levin for a while now. They've been a valued partner with us throughout this journey. And Richard is going to speak, at least from a supplier's point of view. And trust me, Richard is not a very bashful person. If you've known Richard, this is a guy that speaks his mind, and he'll tell you exactly like it is. So I've actually learned a lot from Richard over the past year or so. He's got an excellent sales team. I think a couple of years ago, we awarded a member of his staff an award for just the approach that they take on customer service. Sincerely appreciate that. But Richard, if you will, in a very candid fashion, once you speak on your experiences, at least throughout our partnership, as well as any other advice or insight that you want to share.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Before you move ahead, Chris, I wanted to thank Mike too for making me a little bit more interesting than I actually am. I've got 5 kids. I enjoy flying and skydiving and snowmobiling. I haven't done any of those things, but that's pretty cool. So I think my biggest point in a lot of this is listen to what's being said. If you want to succeed, listen to what these people are saying. You do what they say, you comply, you fall in line, you will succeed. You choose to do business as normal, continue down your normal path, you're not going to align yourself. Get in line, line up, align yourself with AMP. This can help you succeed. What they're really trying to do in a nutshell, and I'm repeating what Wayne said earlier, really is, hey, we can't stock every part. We want you to be an extension of our inventory. He's got a certain amount of inventory. I got another 20,000 items out of here. He wants to be able to access my inventory real time and being able to pull in real time just like it's in his warehouse. It's really as simple as that. No more than that. Chris, next slide, please. You know, how are they doing this? Again, a lot of this is duplication, but I think some of it bears being said, is they got to reduce time. It's simple as that. We can't do the days, the weeks, however long you want to take it. We really have to go from the days to the hours to minutes on everything. And the only way to do that is EDI and via Aero Exchange. There's just really no other way to do that. And what they've chosen to do is make the catalog the most important element of what you bring to the table. There's a lot of different factors that make you succeed. One is being consistent. You got to be reliable. Your data has got to be accurate. Your delivery has to be consistent. You want the buyer to be able to place that order, or the machine to be able to place that order, and essentially they go to sleep in El Salvador knowing that it'll be there tomorrow. They don't want to have any doubt in their mind. They want consistency. That will lead to your success. Chris. The catalog is everything in this. There are some differences in the catalog from your traditional Spec 2000 type catalog. The Spec 2000 catalogs don't contain quantity, don't contain trace types. These are unique to Aero Exchange. These are important for AMP and the team. They want to know how many you have on hand. They want to know what trace types so they can understand whether that works for the job they're working on. As Mike mentioned, you don't have to be real time. We're currently doing 3 times a week updates. We've got it worked out with Aero Exchange fairly well to where we upload catalogs via an FTP. We can take it now probably to daily updating catalogs via automation, to where we can just run a process at night. It zips it up, puts it on their FTP site, and we can automate that. So it's not like you need to be invested in real time. It's the ultimate holy grail, but right now you don't have to be that way. It works well. Aero Exchange has a template. It's an Excel file. They tell you how to fill it out. They're pretty good about supporting you and being able to tell you what's wrong with that. Be accurate. The people at AMP have to have confidence in what you're delivering. They have to have comfort in knowing you're going to be able to deliver what you're saying you're going to do. Work on updating. As I mentioned, we've gone from 3 days. We're going to go to daily, but get yourself updated and update frequently. Doing it once a week, doing it once a month isn't going to buy you any confidence, isn't going to buy them. It's not going to do you any favors. You got to do better than that. Work towards that. Performance is measured. They do a real good job here about measuring what goes on. They have scorecards. This is our scorecard for a period. Not bad. But what we tend to do is ask for the details. There are some links in here now that show you details, so you can go look at what's in there. Pay attention to what this is and go back and do root cause. Go say, well, why did we fall down in this area? What was the problem? As Mike mentioned, there's different tiers. You need to be in the upper tiers. If there's a problem and it's not yours, bring it to their attention. They'll make corrections. So understand the details. Just accept what you're getting here. Measure everything. Value is what is being measured, and see how you can increase your value. Process improvement. It's kind of a bunch of different things here that I want to bring up, but we have what we call a Burger King board up there on the left. You see MRO Parts and other customers. We measure everything. We have a display boards throughout the facility that basically tell us in minutes how long our orders have been on the floor. So you see the yellow ones there are basically, we got an Airline MRO that's been out on the floor for 2 minutes. We have other orders that have been out there for 48 minutes. But as they change colors, there are different steps in the warehouse. So yellow is basically, hey, we're in the picking status. Blue, we're in inspection, and green, we're in shipping. You know, our goal is to get everything in, out in roughly about 35 minutes in that range right now. And as we make changes to our processes, you can measure those and see how that changes. So if you look on the right side where I have bar charts, we're measuring average processing time, and we can actually see if we make a change to a process, does that improve our end-to-end time, or does that make it worse? We've also been able to use this data to go back to the customers and say, hey, you're putting this special requirement on us. That actually adds time to our process. That actually slows down our process. What can we do to change that? And our customers have been pretty receptive as far as saying, oh, you're right, we shouldn't be doing that. Let's do something else. So I think that's important. These people are open to listening to what you got to say too, as it's a collaborative type relationship. They work both ways better than anybody I've seen. So it's a good relationship to founder. On the previous slide, just a second, I moved ahead a little too quick, but Brent Webb designed that. If you guys know Brent Webb, call him. He can do your Burger King board for you. Chris. Yeah, as I mentioned multiple times throughout this has been a great team to work with. I worked with Aeromon, Taka, up through the current environment, and I don't think anybody in the industry I've liked working with better than this group of people. They're really just top notch, and they're really open to listening to what you have to say. They're willing to collaborate. They're willing to work with you, and it's vice versa. It's a partnership more than it's we buy parts. I excel. We do better in environments where we can collaborate, and we really appreciate that. From a commercial perspective, they pay their invoices. They pay like a slot machine. I'd say do business, have a good time. The other thing I said, I wanted to thank them, probably because their amount of business and their volume of business and their success in the last 12 months, we've been able to keep our team together in that period. And I wanted to thank them kindly for doing that. It's really helped us keep everybody employed during the pandemic here. And I'm sure everybody else here is real happy about it too. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard.
Got an echo here. I'm sorry, I had an echo. But just a little bit about Richard, about one of the previous pieces of material. That 1995 slide was shared with us by Richard. And Richard, we really thank you for sharing that. It was very good pieces of information. The irony is that particular supplier that published that standard back in 1995 is the exact same supplier that we worked with to increase their sales. So it was really good to kind of bookend that story. So again, thank you, Richard, for that information. So next up is Danielle Chapman. Danielle has been in the industry for quite some time now. I've known her throughout all of her Aero Exchange days. Aero Exchange is very important to us. And one thing I can say, I'll be honest, when I was first introduced to Aero Exchange, I was very skeptical. To be honest, I didn't understand Aero Exchange because I was taking that typical buyer approach a while back. It was like, well, Aero Exchange is a listing service. Why can't I just stay with ILS? I'm not sure. Well, it's because Aero Exchange is not a listing service. Aero Exchange helps to enable business processes through their exchange system. So I have a huge appreciation for the relationship that we've built with Aero Exchange over the past few years. A huge appreciation for the efforts that Danielle has put forth in educating us on how the systems work. But we do understand that there's still a level of cloudiness around what Aero Exchange brings to the table. So hopefully Danielle will be able to clear up a lot of that cloudiness and spread some sunshine here. So Danielle, if you will, let's put everyone at ease here about Aero Exchange.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. Looking forward to just spending a few moments with everyone today and really just talking about, like it says here, the role of Aero Exchange and exactly how you can let your catalogs do the talking for you. So to get started, back in 2000, so 20 years ago, these 13 airlines that you see on the left founded Aero Exchange. They had a common goal to create efficiencies within their respective supply chains. And so this has really become our mission since our foundation. And so by removing manual processes and utilizing standard communications between trading partners, this allows you to create a more efficient process for your business. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So building on that foundation, over the last 20 years, Aero Exchange has become a globally recognized brand with these 5 pillars of excellence that we see here. So first and foremost, we have asset optimization. And we believe that our solutions help you to better optimize your assets that can lead to revenue generation. So this is something that Mike just spoke about how this, platinum supplier was able to create, how they were able to generate more revenue by doing certain things. And so that's one of the things that we want to talk about today is how we can help you optimize your assets. We also provide tailored e-commerce solutions. So AMP is one of the companies that we've created a custom solution for, which has been spoken about a little earlier today. Unassailable infrastructure, and then data protection as well. So data protection is something that we take seriously here at Aero Exchange. We will never sell your data. We don't aggregate your data. We don't commingle your data. Your data is your data, and it will always stay that way. And then finally, industry innovation. So Aero Exchange, as you saw, we're airline owned and OEM trusted. So our objective, as I've mentioned, really is to create efficiencies. And in doing that, we want to modernize the supply chain ecosystem. And so with your legacy processes, it's generally going to require a high level of manual effort. So you see Kermit here, and he is just pounding away at these keys. And when you have to do this in 2 systems, it really becomes cumbersome. And so in creating efficient processes, a lot of these manual efforts go away. And so typically what you see, this is a picture before Aero Exchange. And coupled with that, you have, buyers or sellers, depending on which side of the transaction you sit on, you have to connect with the other trading partner. So sometimes there's one-to-one connections. And in the past, what we've been told by some of our customers, it can take anywhere from 6 months to a year to make a single connection with one of your trading partners. And so one of the purposes of Aero Exchange is we take out that process. We take out those 6 to 12 months, and we can enable you to connect with either multiple customers or multiple suppliers in a much faster time frame. And so with all the different business processes that you see here, so there's purchase orders, repair orders, exchange orders, et cetera, and the different trading partners within the ecosystem, the aviation ecosystem, there are definitely multiple opportunities to drive innovation through automation. So because of what we do, we essentially provide the ability to connect the entire ecosystem by creating a more efficient supply chain. And you're going to hear me say that several times: efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. That's what we do. We help bring about efficiencies, and we really take the complexities away. So your different processes that we had before, your POs, your repair orders, exchange orders, they can now be managed through the different Aero Exchange solutions that you see here on the right. Aero Buy is at the top, and that's where we're going to focus most of our time today. So Aero Buy is our order management system, so spares order management system. First and foremost, there's catalog management, and we are going to spend a lot more time talking about catalogs. Next, of course, within Aero Buy, you have RFQ management. So not only are you able to manage your catalogs, but you can manage incoming RFQs from your customers as well as respond to them. And something that Mike mentioned just in the introduction is we go beyond that. So we go beyond just the listing and the RFQ management piece. You can also manage your POs. And so the different AMP companies, the different MROH holding companies, they're managing the entire order process through AeroExchange. And this is something else that you can do. So not only just the PO, but your buyer and seller changes, as well as shipment and invoices. And these purchase orders can be transacted with all of the companies that you see on the right there. All right, so let's talk about catalogs. That's why we're here today. So there's two connection types. The first connection type is hosted. And so what that really means, it's a catalog that's hosted here at AeroExchange. You provide it to us via your own personal FTP link, and that may get a little, technical. But at any rate, you provide it to us, and we will update it for you. Your hosted catalog is really only as good as your last update. So something that Richard previously mentioned was that, they started updating their catalog 3 times a week. Well, if you want to do that, great, because your buyers will see the last time that you updated your catalog. So you definitely want to make sure your updates are as frequently as possible, and that, of course, they're also in the AeroExchange template. If they are in the template that we provide, this allows us to upload your catalog the same day generally. And so it's quicker, we can upload it for you. And again, the buyers will see the last time that was updated. So your buyers, of course, if you update it more frequently, they can trust your data, right? It's more accurate, and you're consistently updating the information versus someone that is updating their catalog every month or every 2 months. The more you update it, the better it is for you to help create opportunities to generate revenue. And then, of course, the real-time catalog, which we'll get into next. There's also the different catalog types. So at a bare minimum, you guys should definitely be listing a general catalog. General catalog, it is going to be available to the general buying community at AeroExchange. So, all of those companies that you saw on the previous slide, they'll have access to that information. Most suppliers don't put pricing in this file, and that's fine. What they reserve that for is what we call a buyer-specific catalog. And so the buyer-specific catalog, 2 of the main things that you want to put is lead time and your pricing. This helps your buyers, again, have better information, and it's also custom tailored to them. And so if you have, you can have one buyer specific catalog for every customer on AeroExchange, or if you wanted to group them, by region or buying type, distributor, whatever, MRO, you can do that as well. You can list as many lines as you like as well. There are no additional fees for multiple lines or multiple catalog types. And so let's go into a little bit of more detail as to why AMP is pushing real-time catalogs and really just some of the benefits or the advantages. So at the end of the day, this catalog is going to be, let me see, oh, sorry. Okay, so it's going to be buyer specific by default. So essentially what that means is you don't have to list buyer specific catalogs. The way this information is transacted or transferred in an electronic fashion is you'll know the buyer that is sending the information. So whoever is sending the request, you'll know it, and your system can respond with a real-time message of the information. And speaking of real-time message, that's another advantage. It's real-time information. So if someone was to search for a part right at this moment, they're going to know what the details are for your part right at this moment. Additionally, something else that is not provided in a hosted catalog, or there really isn't space for, rather, is stocking location. So this again gives your buyer more details as to where the part is. And then lastly, multi-trace options. This is something that AMP pushed for last year, and we were able to add this to the real-time catalog message, in that you're able to provide multi-trace options for your catalog. So if you have multiple lines of the same part numbers, the different serial numbers, of course, are going to have their different trace documents, and that's information that you can put within the real-time catalog response. So again, you're giving your customers more data to make a better decision. So some of the business benefits of really just going electronic, so having electronic communications for not only your catalog, but the RFQs, POs, shipments, and invoices. Automation at the end of the day is going to save you time, right? So when you're not having to work in two systems, you can spend your time doing other value-added activities. So no brainer, it's going to save time. Additionally, you'll have increased probability to receive orders. So another benefit of listing a catalog and then of course going real time is the buyers don't have to send an RFQ. They can make a decision right then and there. So sending an RFQ is going to spend more time for them. And when you're trying to go from days to minutes, time is of the essence. So you don't have time to wait for the responses from an RFQ. So you definitely want to make sure that you're providing pricing, lead time, the additional information for your customers to make a better decision. Of course, you're going to have fewer invoice exceptions. So when your order management is processed through a single solution that both the buyer and the seller share, this solution in the background has checks and balances, and it really leaves it's going to leave little room for error as it relates to invoicing. And then, of course, if you have fewer invoice exceptions, it can lead to quicker payments. Oftentimes, the buyers have the invoicing integrated into their accounting systems. And so with that, because everything has already been agreed to within the order, the checks and balances are in place, they can auto-generate payments. So we've heard from our suppliers that generally when you manage the entire process through AeroXchange, that they tend to have quicker payments. And then at the end, of course, higher customer satisfaction. So anytime that you're providing your customer more information, providing them visibility to their orders, at the end of the day, they're going to be satisfied. And so final thoughts, the things that I like to reiterate, your data is your data. As I mentioned, we'll never sell it. It's secure. We'll never commingle it. We'll never aggregate it. Your data will always be your data. At a bare minimum, you want to list a general catalog, but then once you get the general catalog and you're comfortable with that, definitely look into going to a buyer-specific catalog. This is going to provide more information for your customers, as well as give you a better opportunity to sell more parts. And then lastly, hosted catalog is great, but the real-time catalog is where the money happens. Kidding. The real-time catalog is where it's at. It's real-time information, and it's really the gold standard. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Danielle. Appreciate that commentary. No surprise, we have a few questions regarding AeroXchange, which we'll pass along to you here. So in summary, folks, again, it is literally time for our industry to move from days to minutes. I'll have to quote the National Rifle Association when one of their slogans are, when seconds matter, the police are minutes away, right? Sorry to use that, but I think the same thing applies to our industry. When days matter, the parts need to be minutes away. Again, reiterate, real-time catalogs is, again, the gold standard. Thank you, Danielle, for putting it that way. When it comes to increasing buyer productivity, as well as maximizing your sales, let's get your inventory position in real time. Now, hosted catalogs, again, updating your catalog 3 to 4 times a week is great. We know that your inventory doesn't turn that fast, and the risk of quantity error is minimized. But when it comes to just exposure and behaving as if you are on site with the customer, make the investment into a real-time system. Okay, and as Rob pointed out, it's just cost prohibitive for our customers to try to carry everything that they need. You just can't. It doesn't make sense to run 100%. To try to run 100% service level for your inventory needs, especially as an MRO, with the variability of the types of fleets and aircraft that you could work on, as well as the customer mix. And from an airline standpoint, the days of airlines, carrying inventory, stocking it to the hilt, I think is over. Okay, so again, make the investment when it comes to your systems. Another point, again, we are determined to build alliances, right? Not burn bridges. Our job is to empower our supplier base in order for our mutual customers, which are the airlines and the MROs, to benefit. And again, and that can just be done by letting the catalogs do the talking. So to close it up, we're in the 2000s. A lot has changed, right? Everyone knows that I'm a big Bama fan. Back in the mid 90s, Bama wasn't really doing anything. They changed their model, and guess what? 6 championships later, they are the gold standard in college football. Apple basically upended the cell phone industry. They took a cell phone and turned it into basically like another arm or a leg. You can't walk or leave your house without it. Scientists have basically editing the genetic sequences. Phil Mickelson this past Sunday, was a 50-year-old golf major champion. Why? Because he reinvented his game. He didn't take the same approach that he took when he came into professional golf. So I love the decade of the 90s. I can appreciate the decade of the 2020s, but we should always be trying to move ourselves forward. So, and yes, Brad Pitt is still the sexiest man alive. And he's no longer a horrible actor. He's actually a pretty good actor. All right, so we have time for a few questions here. Danielle, this first question is for you. It comes from, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't mind me publishing his name. It comes from my friend Alon out Stealth Aerospace. Alon says, I did not think it was possible to quote 0-day lead time in air exchange. Can you confirm if that is possible?
Yes. Hello, Alon. Thank you for the question. So it is possible if you are a distributor. That's it.
Okay. Next question. If Aero Exchange catalogs have pricing, lead time, and stock levels, but does not have trace, is it ignored? Question is for Danielle. Sorry about that.
I think that's for us.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Yes, Wayne, I'm sorry. Wayne, can you take a stab at this one?
Sure. Guys, look, we're very customer centric, right? So we're all about helping the customer get the parts in that they need. And I know, I've said this before, so apologize, but I'll say it again. We're thinking forward about our respective customer and not so much about the parts supply as we are about filling their requirements. So, thank you to Mr. Cords for taking the time with us today. But I mean, he's worried about a lot of lines of maintenance, as you guys saw, right? Dozens and dozens of lines of maintenance and customers that want their airplanes back at the cost of, what do we want to call it, $25,000, $50,000 per day. So a $12 part can stop. They're very particular, right, about having all the parts on their aircraft when they take off. And those parts, by different customer requirements, have to have a certain level of trace. Right, and some are more strict than others. Our customers, or excuse me, Emerald Holdings customers, which we think of our customers as our customers, that have very strict standards in most cases. So if we know a part's available, but we don't know what the trace type is, how can we buy that? So the system is definitely set up to say, we have a minimum trace code requirement for that customer. And if anything higher, that's why we set up the hierarchy of the trace code the way we did. So, AA, if you provide an AA trace and our requirement is AD, right, it will take anything above AD. So that, yes, that trace code is required, very simply because we're required by our customer to provide that particular trace level to their customer. So this is, again, very customer centric and flowing back. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Wayne. So the next question, I'll take it. Commitment to ship the same day. With Ex-Works terms in place, we would need to adjust our daily cutoffs to meet the carrier's schedule of arrival to our facility. Although we may be capable to process, pack, invoice before 5 p.m., the carrier should arrive at our facility before 2 p.m. How do we account for this discrepancy between our capabilities and the capabilities of the carrier? Yes, we understand from an Incoterm standpoint, if you're running Ex-Works, it is absolutely the responsibility of the buyer to manage the carrier. With that said, the supplier has obviously a very intimate knowledge of how that carrier interacts with its operations. Obviously, the suppliers are also customers of the carrier. So I think we need to share that responsibility. So yes, we do, and our customers do manage our carriers, and we could have conversations with them on at least optimizing, or at least trying to build more efficiency in the cutoff times for carrier pickup, and obviously managing them to an expectation when it comes to on-time pickups and on-time shipments. So in my opinion, that is a shared responsibility, but the buyer is accountable for managing the carrier, if you will. Next question here, and guys, I love all of these questions. We obviously won't have time to answer them, so I'll take a couple of more. Wayne, another one. Will C&E material fit the automated buy process?
Absolutely. And guys, we've centered our business around both expendable and consumable material. We do that using a lot of AeroXchange standards. So one of the things that we love about AeroXchange is they've set up standards for our industry, and we can argue whether or not they're perfect, but it's kind of nonsense to do so. They are the best standard for EDI. So we use their units of measure, we use their condition codes. We've helped humbly drive some things like the trace code, and with more to come. Again, lead time is super important, guys. This is another big step change in our industry. So the automation, getting the lead time right and understanding that both in terms of ordering and in terms of tracking, you'll see that coming. And we have some more automations in the future that I think you guys are gonna like. But yes, absolutely, it's expendable material, it's new material that we're talking a new surplus. Using those AeroXchange unit of measures and condition codes and trace codes allows us to buy all of that in an automated fashion.
Thank you, Wayne.
Yes, sir.
Got time for another question here. And guys, again, thank you for your questions. We won't be able to get to all of them. Feel free to reach out to me via email and schedule a meeting. I can definitely go in depth to all of your questions, from the very easy ones to answer, as well as the ones that require to me a separate meeting for us to discuss. So the last question, Daniel, I think one of our suppliers wants some clarity around what do you mean by distributor of listing the 0-day lead time? What does that technically mean from an automation standpoint?
Yeah, I was going to clear that up because I checked with our support just to make sure I was saying that right. So actually, anyone can put a 0-day lead time. It's not just distributors. So if you have it, kind of to Wayne's point earlier when he was talking about lead time and what that meant as far as your cutoff time, if your lead time is 0 days, then do 0 days. So you can put a 0-day lead time, meaning it would get there the same day.
I'm going to add just a little more color to that, if I may, Mike. Again, guys, we want to center this around your processes, right? So suppliers, if you say your order cutoff time is 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, right, for that particular facility, which has that, you maybe have multiple facilities. You'll see that in your supplier portal, which Mike has gotten and Chris have gotten out to you guys. If you fill that in, that facility has a 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time cutoff. If we order at 1:59, 0 means we're going with your commitment that you'll ship that today. That's what we're hearing you say, right? You're telling us by saying 2 p.m. that at 1:59, your time zone, if it's ordered, you'll ship it today. If it's 2:01 p.m., right, it means it's going to ship tomorrow. Just make sure we get that. That's the key definition. I know we've got a lot of definitions out there about back orders and lead times, etc. This is the number of quantity that you list as having available for shipment with that lead time, right? Those two things are inextricably linked. So what if you list 7 of that part number and say 0, that cutoff time, we're going to honor that. It's on you. We're not going to force you to say 4 p.m. We're not going to force you to say 1 p.m. If you say it's 2 p.m., our system knows 1:59 means you ship today if you list 0 lead time. If you list 1 day lead time, that means if it's 1:59 today means you'll ship tomorrow. 2:01 p.m. means you'll ship in 2 days. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Wayne. Well, I think this wraps up our conversation for today. There will obviously be a part 2 to this. But again, please do not be bashful with setting up meetings to get more detail and more insight about today's discussion. I sincerely appreciate all of our attendees today. At one point, we were slightly over 80 attendees, so to me, this was a success. But definitely, I think success is measured by participation in these discussions. So a lot of these questions that have been asked, I'm really enjoying reading them. Can't get to all of them today, but again, I strongly encourage you to reach out to get your questions answered. We have nothing to hide here. Again, our job is to form alliances to create a mutual benefit between buyer and seller, because we are all linked to these aircraft that are flying at 35,000 feet. They either need to move freight or they need to move people, right? And there's enough to go around. But automation has to be the standard. Minutes have to be the standard going forward. So thank you again, and we look forward to part 2 of this. We'll be expecting to see most of our supplier bases. Can expect a few conferences before the end of the year. We probably won't attend all of them. I'll make myself available at least some of these conferences as well as my team. But again, feel free to reach out for any virtual meetings or discussions that you want to have. So thank you to all the speakers today. I really appreciate it. I've driven all of you guys crazy over the past couple of months. With some rapid fire scheduling of meetings and so forth. But again, I sincerely appreciate Danielle from Aero Exchange, Richard from AJ11, as well as Rob Cords from MRO Holdings. Wayne, thank you again for your insight. So everyone, have a great day.
Thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate it.